It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and I'm excited to be with you today. As always, I have a great episode. I'm sitting here in the Furman Garner Performance Studio at the great KUAF Studios here at the corner of School and I can't remember the name of that street where the library is, but I'm right across the street from the wonderful Fayetteville Public Library. And I'm sitting here with two wonderful guests. And before I actually introduce them, I just want to say to you, you never know where you're going to meet somebody. And I always run into amazing people as I'm out and about here in Northwest Arkansas. That's what makes Northwest Arkansas so special. And these guests are no exception to that rule. And it's just nice that as you come in contact with so many different people, you hear their stories and you say, that's a story that I would love to share. And that's one of the reasons why I created this platform. And I'm so appreciative of being able to team up with KUAF to even amplify that platform. And as you guys know, you can now hear the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast on Ozarks at Large every Tuesday, typically at 12 noon, and the replay is at 7 p.m. You can also listen to it on the Ozarks at Large podcast. We're also on the NPR One app, so we're all over the country. Northwest Arkansas is on the map. So it's not just the fastest growing MSA in the country. There's so much more happening here. And I am blessed to be able to just categorize and share even a little bit of it. So without further delay, I want to welcome Yang Luo-Branch, who is the president of the Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses, and Michael Mourot, who is on the board of the Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses. They are joining me today for a very expansive conversation on what and I'm going to use the acronym AAAB is doing here in Arkansas. And we'll go through that. You can also find them at ARKAsianBiz.com. And we'll put everything that we talk about today in the show notes so that you guys can access and connect with them, because they're doing some really cool things. And I think you're going to really like where this conversation is going to go. So strap in and check this out. So without further ado, Yang, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm here during my lunch hour.
Right. Yeah, we got to get you back to work. I mean, and I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. And Michael, you're doing okay?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah, flew up this week. I'm good here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're here. And certainly it's my honor to talk with you guys a little bit about the Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses. So, Yang, why don't you start out giving our listeners an introduction to the AAAB and why it is so important to you?
Yes. Thank you, Randy. So glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Good to see you again. Good to hear your voice in person again. So why is it so important? Because it's personal. I believe anybody has a big passion about something, it's because of it's personal to them. So
Sure.
I founded this organization in 2017. At that time, I was just a few years into the professional world. I come from China originally. And then after graduate school, I had quite a bit of struggle to assimilate into the American workplace in several fronts. First is my visa issue. Second is, after the visa issue was solved, is how to present myself in the everyday American work environment. I was always the quietest person in the room. I felt marginalized, but nobody's fault but mine. So that went on for a couple of days. And then I came through the other end that gave a TEDx talk on the TEDx stage. There's another story about that, but become a very confident public speaker. So I felt that journey, if I could share that with other people like myself, how to overcome the culture differences, how to be successful in a new land of opportunity, that would be a great higher purpose fulfilled. That's when my husband nudged me, hey, why don't you start something if you feel there's a gap in Arkansas? So that's when I founded the organization. So the mission of the organization is to connect Arkansas and Asia in business, in career development. So at the time of me founding this organization, I was working at the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. So that experience opened my eyes that when our Arkansas delegations go into Asia, they probably didn't know the ins and outs, how to really present themselves in a very appealing way to the Asian market they want to break into. So that's why it was at our founding principle, this needs to be two ways. It's not just Asians in Arkansas, it's Arkansans go to Asia as well.
Yeah. It's almost like a boot camp for cultural differences and understanding, exactly what you're getting involved with and understanding, the people that you're going to interact with.
Yes, absolutely. Understanding that. And also we're just a platform to bring people all together to help each other. So a networking platforms go in both ways. So Michael is a great example of someone that's very different from me, a different direction.
Yes. And that's a perfect segue, Michael. She has teed it up perfectly.
Oh, perfectly. For you. Yeah. Now if I don't mess it up.
I would love for you just to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you arrived here at the doorstep of the Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses.
I appreciate that, Randy. Yeah, I was born and raised in Morrilton, Arkansas, so I grew up here in the States, so that gets one of the connections, and went to school in Fayetteville, chemical engineer, but then left the state, went to work in Texas, south of Houston, and worked there a long time, but started doing a lot of international travel for that company, and then now as a consultant, travel extensively internationally. A little bit what Yang was saying, maybe 10 years ago, we had some major projects in China specifically, but some in Japan and other parts. And one of the strategies was we incorporated 10 or 12 translators, interpreters that would help us be able to integrate into that culture, language. And it wasn't just the translation, but the culture of, Randy, I had to learn at a big table who did toast, who didn't do toast, those kind of things. I had a great vision of learning Mandarin, but that went out the window after 2 weeks. So I didn't do that. But incorporating people that understood a little bit of the culture and the depth of what we were doing, not just the business side, that was easy, but it was the cultural side, the people side that became the more difficult, especially as we worked for some of the bigger country-owned companies, and that kind of thing. So that drove me to understanding Asia Pacific, China. And so as I got to thinking about it, how do I give back to my home state of Arkansas? I had attended a couple of things in Morrilton, and I thought, I was a rare person in my high school. I'm one of the rare ones that left the county, but how do I bring that back? Because they didn't understand the culture when I talked about being international and those. I then went and looked and saw where Young and others were putting on these quarterly reviews on the internet and that kind of thing. So I thought, let me hook into that. Got hooked the very first time. They had some good speakers, and I thought, well, shoot, I can do this. This is a perfect way for me to connect my roots in Arkansas and my experience and network in Asia Pacific. And so got a hold of Young. We went to a coffee shop and got to at least know each other. And the story, as they say, went from there.
Right.
Became a board member and started to work on some of the projects and really are at a point of expanding and how do we take it from the first 5 years that Young's put together to what's that next level that we can make that happen. So,
I love hearing that. And I love just, in my mind, seeing the differences that you both bring to the table. And that you were able to kind of use the bridge, if you will, of Arkansas to kind of connect the two, right? And so I think it's important for people to hear that because a lot of times we think, things just happen just out of thin air. But, you have to have some intentionality behind that. I mean, Young had some intentionality about starting this. And I certainly want to applaud you that you got out of your comfort zone and you did the TED Talk, as you mentioned, and you've done so many other things. And I'm always telling my wife that public speaking is, I know people, it's like the greatest fear that most people have. But once they understand that you practice it and you do it a little bit, that it becomes easier. It's like a muscle. You develop that muscle and over time you just get stronger and stronger. And I want anybody that's listening to this to understand the importance and the power of communication, because it will make a difference. And in this way, Yang has honed and fine-tuned her communication so much that she's come together with somebody like Michael, and they are now connecting the dots for a lot of people that wouldn't have normally been able to have a better understanding about Asian, Arkansan relationships and what they look like. And I certainly applaud both of you guys for going down this route. And certainly we'll look back years from now and say, if it wasn't for the time and effort that you both put into this and just your desire to kind of bridge the divide, we wouldn't have what we have now. And whatever that now is late in the future, it's going to be exciting to see how that comes about. So, but I mean, Yang, why don't you kind of just talk a little bit about, so as you started this organization, where did you think it was going to go?
What did I think? I wanted to make through the next day.
That was it.
That was it. I just know I had a big passion. Like Michael said, his personal connection. I had a personal connection. It's personal.
Yeah.
Once I take it on, once I announced, I think the most difficult thing, scary thing was announcing, hey, I'm doing this to the world.
Yeah.
But once past that, it's about every day, how do I make it to the next day? Have somewhat a vision of what kind of programs we want to create. Like I said earlier, I have a full-time job. And, it's my desire to continue to advance in the American workplace. So I work for one of the top Fortune 100 company in the area.
Sure.
So all I have is in the morning. So Michael and I start sending emails to each other starting at 5 a.m.
Wow.
And then we send emails in the evening. And I'm a mother of a 4-year-old. So I'm not trying to be dramatic about this. Just carrying on the organization to the next day and true to my passion. That's all I have been wanting it to be all along.
Well, I mean, I applaud you for your efforts, because you've gotten this organization to a level of maturity that, it sometimes takes a while for this to happen. And I think what you were describing earlier is what we sometimes describe or call the messy middle. It's that part of life where, or when we're trying to do something and birth it, right? You can appreciate it with a 4-year-old child.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of messiness involved in that process, but it's beautiful because you ultimately have a finished product. Wait till they get 18. That's a whole nother conversation. But there is that excitement of birthing something, and you in birthing this Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses. I think it's important because part of that is the unknown. What could this actually become?
Right.
How will it represent itself here in Arkansas as well as in China?
Yes.
And that's kind of the excitement. So I would love for you to maybe tell me, now that you're 5 years into this, what have been some of your aha moments where you have seen some of the connections take place between people in mainland China and people here in Arkansas?
I want to make a distinction real quick. Great question. So even though I'm from China, Michael mentioned China, we are all Asia focused.
Sure.
So we want, because of, why am I saying this is because there's some tension between US and China.
Absolutely.
Right now. We want to just let everybody know we're mindful of the global tension and we want to go beyond that. And I'm happy to comment on US-China relations, but to your question, the ahas, right? So the biggest aha is it just takes someone to get it started.
Yeah.
All the resources will come together. I'm just a facilitator of all of these. Michael come forward. Our 5 other board members come forward. We have board members from representing all walks of life, from, a small business owner, operator to, seasoned executives. And everywhere in between, they all have a whole lot of unique perspective to contribute. So I feel a big aha. I never thought I wanted to make this as my career, still not a career goal, but it only took me to start the organization, to carry it on day by day so the great things can come together. I'm just a facilitator. So I don't think people need to overthink on, hey, let's make something brilliant and genius, you don't need to do that. A lot of times it's just create that opportunity. I wanted the opportunity for myself, and it's great that it has become an opportunity for many other connections to happen.
Well, and I'm glad you made that distinction because you bring up a good point. And I know you created like these, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, the 5 personas of the Arkansas Asia business community. Asia is not just China. Asia is a lot of other places. So I would love for you. Now, Michael, were you privileged to travel in other parts of Asia besides just China?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think you make a great point, Randy, that, and just because some of our uniqueness here of connecting through the China connection, but, Asia is a huge place. India is a huge component of even our focus. Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, all of those areas are included. And so we make sure we try to move past just the China component and the other components in that part of the world. And so that's critical as we come into the next phase, is having a focus on the entire Asia population.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was actually just listening to, I overheard another soccer parent talking about how they were headed to Vietnam in the next couple of weeks for some business. And then another friend of mine was telling me that his colleague was headed to Vietnam as well because they manufacture clothing.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a huge group of folks that are over there doing environmentally sustainable clothing for them, which is really cool. And I'll give a shout out to Livesin because it's public that they do work down there in Vietnam. But I mean, that's the example of how sometimes we think, and you might be listening to this, you, the listener, saying, well, what does this have to do with me? I don't leave Arkansas. That's okay. There are other people that are right near you, maybe even your neighbor that does leave Arkansas and will get on a plane and fly all the way to Vietnam or fly all the way to mainland China, or you fill in the blank other Asian location to do business, right? Because the world is global. When it comes to business and when it comes to opportunities, there are global opportunities there. And a lot of those emanate from right here in Arkansas.
Absolutely. And I would also add, if you have children, if that is their desire to, we have a saying in my native culture, the Chinese cultures, you read 1,000 books, you travel 1,000 miles. That's how you build the world view. So I see a lot of, community members of the AAAB, their first exposure to rest part of the world is through the study abroad programs. So even if you traveling, across borders is not your cup of tea, but if you have, children going to school, encourage them to attend the study abroad program that will possibly change their course of life.
Well, since you said that, I'm going to just have a quick commercial and that commercial is simply, I want to encourage anybody listening to this that even if you're not a member of Rotary, all of the Rotary clubs here in Northwest Arkansas, District 6110, they participate in a program called the Rotary Youth Exchange. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because right now, as I'm recording this, there is a young man that's living in my house. His name is Eason, and he is from Taiwan. And he has been our exposure to Asia, and he's living with us for half the year, and then he's going to live with another host family for half the year. But he's here on that Rotary Youth Exchange. And at that same instance, my son, Joshua, whom I love dearly, is in Brazil experiencing life down there. And we being the Fayetteville area Rotary clubs, sent a young man to Taiwan and another young man to Japan. And their lives will be fundamentally changed because of that experience. And so I do want to encourage folks. I mean, Michael, you left Morrilton. And there's nothing wrong for anybody that decided to stay and it wasn't their cup of
Morrilton's
tea.
a great place. Let me be clear on the note.
Yeah, but you left Morrilton and you got to experience that. And we want to see more kids. I want to see more young people understand that it's a big world out there with a lot of possibilities.
Randy, I just to give you a little bit of some of the programs we're doing here in the College of Engineering. Huge expansion of foreign students coming, going, just like your son, Joshua. My older son is Joshua also.
Okay.
But my children obviously traveled much more than I ever did. And I have 5 grandsons that all have frequent flyer accounts. So it's a different world.
It is.
But it is going and experiencing it, podcast, internet, just seeing what the world looks like and how people think. And I think the first impression is it's totally different. Well, it is. There's changes, but there's so much that is so common to us as a human, no matter where we are. That
Absolutely.
really is.
Yeah.
So I agree with you completely. If the more we can expose people, the more I think a lot of our issues will kind of calm down too. Yeah.
And if I may make a quick promotion too.
Sure, please promote away.
Yes. Staying in Arkansas, but being exposed to the globe. This Thursday, we're hosting an event called the Global Talent of Arkansas. This Thursday, September 21st. I know people may listen to this at a different time, but
yeah, and this definitely will not be out when that comes. But how often do you do this event?
Yes, this will be an annual opportunity in person. So if you want to get the first taste of being exposed to the global talent, we don't say that mean by you have to have a certain degree, have to be a business executive. Anybody that has a global background, like, many of our nail salon workers coming from Asia, and they are considered global talent. They have a talent. So this will be your inclusive in-person networking opportunity to get to know the world.
Well, and I'll be sure to get whatever social media post that you're putting out, and I'll share it out on I Am Northwest Arkansas, because I am all about making sure that information gets out there, because I think a lot of times, like you said, people think that they're alone by themselves. But, no man or woman is an island, right? I mean, there are always going to be other people that have been going in the route that you're going in the direction that you're going. You just need to hear their stories. And that's why, Young, I think your story is so profound and so important to be repeated over and over again, whether in a TED Talk or at an event like this. People need to hear it, because you may interact with somebody that is working in a nail salon today, but might own 10 nail salons tomorrow, or might start another type of business tomorrow. And I think it's just important for us to create those opportunities for growth where people can see the potential for what they really represent. So that I'll get off my soapbox now, but I think that's exciting in terms of what you guys are doing. And certainly we will share that information out and make sure that everybody has links to all that the Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses is doing both today and in the future, so that you guys can connect with them. Because you're right, somebody might be listening to this 2 years from now, or could be a young man or woman that's coming here from Asia to go to the U of A, and they want to know, what are they getting themselves into? That's one of the reasons why I created this podcast, because I wanted people to have an understanding of what Northwest Arkansas is all about. We have indoor plumbing. We have bathrooms. We brush our teeth. It's like the misconceptions that everybody has about different places. And I think it's important for us to dispel those misconceptions as early and as often as we can. So, well, listen, I want to talk real quickly, because we don't have a lot of time. I want to talk about the whole program that you put together, the 5 personas of the Arkansas Asia business community. And so I'm just going to read these off, and then Mike, you're going to talk about a couple of those, and then Young, you're going to talk about the rest. And this is important. Those of you that are listening to this whole exercise, and I'll share a link to this PDF on the show notes. This whole exercise is really valuable for anybody starting a business, because if you don't know who your persona or avatar is of your perfect customer, you'll never know how to serve their needs. And so they have the 5 personas of the Arkansas Asia business community. The first is the bricks and mortar worker. The second one is the international business consultant. The third is the college educated corporate immigrant employee. And that's what you were, Young.
Yes,
right.
Correct.
And so that's like you. It's the Arkansas goods exporters, and then the technology startup owner from Asia. And so I'm going to have Michael and Young kind of take their specific areas and talk about and focus on them. So Young, why don't you go first to talk about the bricks and mortar worker, the college educated corporate immigrant employee, and the technology startup owner from Asia, since you're going to represent those 3 personas. And then Michael will talk a little bit about the international business consultant, because that's kind of what he was.
Right.
And we'll talk about the Arkansas goods exporter, because people listening to this may find that they fall into one of these categories.
Agree.
So,
absolutely.
Young, you can go first.
Yes, and I just want to give quick credit to the Clinton School of Public Service. They helped us with this year-long project. So great work. So to begin with, we want to be as inclusive as we can as the AAAB. We don't want to, Yang, only live out of my perspective. I can only see my lifestyle. Maybe that's what I'll start with. The immigrant employee in corporations. So that is me.
Yeah.
I just need to put my picture on there. So this type of personas usually has a college degree or higher, and usually are in an office job setting, and then they want to grow professionally in Arkansas or just in America in general. So what's top of mind? Visa is number one. Are they staying on a work visa, a marriage visa, or some kind of solve so they don't have a problem staying here?
Right.
And that's usually not a topic that can be openly talked about because nobody cares.
Yeah.
Other than yourself. Your whole life course can be changed based on where you get to stay. And secondly, once the visa issue is squared away, how to make progress, right? Self-promotion, public speaking, having a competitive edge of skills. So that's number one. That's my life day in and day out. Number two, I want to say I have huge appreciation for is the brick and mortar business, workers. So think of the boba tea shop operator. Think of the Chinese restaurant waitress. Think of the Indian grocery store checkout cashier. Think of the nail salon, operator. So I have a desk job. I can be on the computer all day. Can they?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't, work out of a desk and in front of a computer to see what's all out there. They have a very hands-on work, work environment. So we want to understand where they are. They usually speak another language, usually the first or second generation immigrants. Visa could be a thing or may not be a thing, right? So they usually don't speak perfect English if they're not from here. And usually they have very limited social network if they don't have time to go out to network or even think about the importance of networking as a professional. They work in a family operated small business. That's their whole world. So I don't want to miss speaking on that, but that's the research we've done. So how can we help them to see a, level up opportunity in Arkansas? That would be our desire. The last one is, again, when we pick board members, they are represented. All 5 personas are represented on our board.
Oh, wow.
The last one, I have a specific, individual in mind. This persona, who is the tech startup, owners, usually are from India. So there's a big Indian, IT or technology community in Northwest Arkansas. Everybody can see.
Yeah.
So there's a strong sense of community here and a very unique culture background. They're proud. They should be proud. Very vibrant culture. And how to communicate that to the settlement, community. And then they want to give back. And they usually send money back home to support a bigger family home. And they may have a visa issue. And then, they hire globally because they're not from here to begin with.
Right,
so why only hire Benton County county employees?
Sure.
Their view started out to be global. So how can we leverage that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that because, they might hire virtual assistants, virtual workers that work in other parts of the world. And, just a shout out, I've been working with an individual in Asia for almost 6 years now who has edited my podcast. And Jerson is the man, and we're friends. Legitimate friends. I talked to him about his family, what he's doing, and I'm thankful that I got introduced to him so long ago. But people don't realize that in this day and age, with the advent of technology where it is, we've actually become a lot closer than you'd think.
Absolutely.
And actually one of my goals is to get to the Philippines to go visit with he and his family.
Awesome.
And so that's something that I do plan to do. But you're absolutely right. And I think I love what you've done with these personas because you've gotten granular in the focus of who is our ideal individual and how can we help them.
Absolutely.
And I think anybody listening to this that falls into this category, you need to understand that this program, this organization is here to help. And again, I'm thankful that Yang decided to start it and look at where it's coming. And so now when you look at the other side of the coin with regard to these 5 personas, there's 2 more that we didn't mention. And I'm going to give Michael a second to do that before we wrap up, because I'd love for you just to kind of share your thoughts about the international business consultant and the Arkansas goods exporter.
Yeah, no problem. I'll also tell you that Young had a great comment about we engaged with the Clinton School for Public Service.
Yeah.
Some of that was design. You know, when I helped on the board, we've done this a lot of times with clients of who are you trying to serve? And you talked about this messy middle. We're at that point with AAAB. We're ready to grow, but we really needed to understand where are we trying to look at. So we asked not just who are you, but what do you like? What do you dislike? How do you get communicated with? Okay.
Right.
You know, you can't expect them to have iPhones and all that. How do you do that? So I think it was a great exercise for Young and I, but also really identifying some of these people. And we went and interviewed those people. So we didn't just draw this up. Some of those were hesitant, I'll be honest with you, to actually interview with us. They were unsure how it was going to be used. So you had to get a confidence factor for them to give us some information. Now, the 2 that I am were more open, okay, because they're just used to it, okay. You've got international consultants like myself that are critical in understanding both cultures of being able to operate just as successful in India as it is in Arkansas, okay. Yeah. So we did interview those folks. A lot of common things there. They're usually very highly educated. They are pretty independent. They're pretty good with communication tools, many or more than one language. So it gives you that persona. Okay, if we're going to try and help those folks, but also, as Young said, you know, the Chinese waitress or something like that, it's a broad spectrum of what we're trying to put together, but we're going after it. And the last one is really the more focus that people see is Arkansas exports a lot of things, okay? It really does.
I had no idea that Arkansas was like the biggest exporter of rice.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was actually in China. The first shipment of rice into China was from the state of Arkansas, okay? And it was interesting because if you look at it, you're talking about one common element is rice production, okay? Yeah. You know? People ask me, well, I had rice every day growing up. Well, that just happened to be in Arkansas too, you know. Right. So, but I think the personas give us an avenue to know, okay, how do we take the next 3 to 5 years, build off of what Young's put together and explore and be able to expand that. So I think that's really what we're trying to do. Yeah.
It makes me blush to hear my name repeated many times. It's
in a nice way.
In a nice way, but you know, I hope eventually my it's not tied to me, but more of Arkansas and Asia. And then I just also want to add a note to these personas. We want to also have a perspective of their journeys, right? So the immigrant employee at corporations, they come from student background.
Yeah.
I was there. So how can we engage student? And then they may grow into an international business consultant.
Right.
How can we help them on that journey? And all of them, right? It's just a snapshot of where they are now, but we want to think with the time element of their journey.
And add one more thing to that. You know, as Young has talked about, obviously we're hosting an event this week, but one of the tracks is myself and an immigration lawyer from here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
Well, it just serves almost every one of the personas, you know, so I'm going to do some of the cultural differences and he's going to bring some of the complications of immigration. And, you know, when you work for big companies, you don't see it because behind the scenes,
they have a team of lawyers that can take care of that.
They take care of it. But if you're on your own, you're trying to start a family, that is really difficult. And it's not just any government, but any immigration is not simple. So that's just one of the areas that we uncovered. We kind of knew it before that.
Sure.
But this just adds to what we're trying to do. Yeah.
And then you touched on the openness of taking the interviews, Michael. Another element I would say is trust. A lot of the immigrants, human nature, we trust people like us,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So immigration attorney, people in my Chinese circle always look for Chinese immigration attorney in Arkansas. Where are you going to find that? right? So the Hispanic ones, maybe they want to find Hispanic immigration attorneys.
Sure.
Right? But, bankers, they want to find. So how can I trust the most important thing of my life to someone that's so different from us?
Sure,
Those
absolutely.
are just things we want to bridge, resources we want to bridge and connect the dots.
I love that. And, there's a million questions that I have. I'm just curious to know, have you found a lot of encouragement from some of the bigger companies that reside right here in Northwest Arkansas? Because I can only imagine that the work that you guys are doing on the ground can actually benefit them as they continue to be and become the companies that they hope to be, and for all of the employees that they employ.
Thank you for that question. The short answer is yes. So Since you asked, I'll just give a shout out to Tyson Foods, who I'm employed full time. So Tyson has always been a sponsor of us, and we're talking with corporate giving program on longer term funding opportunity. And in my immediate team, my boss is from Jordan. His boss is from Ireland. We just have the most culturally...
It's like the United Nations.
We appreciate each other, what the perspective they bring. So I'm supported, philosophically, mentally, emotionally, and financially.
That's all you can ask for in a workspace. But I think it's important. I want people to hear that there are programs out there, even if you're not aware, that there are programs right here in Northwest Arkansas that can help benefit or help advance whatever your cause is, whatever you're trying to accomplish as an individual or collectively within your organization. So organizations like the Arkansas Association of Asian Businesses are here to help you. And I certainly want to encourage you to take advantage of them. Again, the website, if people want to connect with you, is arkasianbiz.com. Is that correct?
That is correct,
Okay,
Randy.
Great. Do you want to give anybody an email if they want to reach out to you? Or?
Yes. The email is simple. It's info@arkasianbiz.com.
Perfect. And we'll put all of that in the show notes. And so, listen, Yang Luo-Branch and Michael Mourot, thank you guys both so much for joining us on this episode of the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. And we hope to have you back at some point in time in the future to tell us about more of your exploits. And again, this whole 5 personas really encouraged me. I'm actually going to use that because I'm working on a new business that I started recently. Shout out to onboardnwa.com.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The hyperlocal job board here in Northwest Arkansas. And I'm starting to think about the different personas of people that I'm serving with this job board. And so this is actually very helpful for me. But I'm going to share this out on the show notes because I think any of you listening to this that wants to start a business or offering some type of service and you want to figure out who your customer base is, who your client base is, this will be very helpful for you to kind of get the ball rolling. And re-listen to this episode again because Yang and Michael shared some really, really great information. So thank you both so much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Randy.
Absolutely.
Great time.
Well, folks, that's another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To learn more about us or to read or download the show notes from today's episode that I just talked about, please visit iamnorthwestarkansas.com. You can listen to this podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with us and all things NWA. Sign up today. You can subscribe to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it. And please, please, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit iamnorthwestarkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.